I'm going to kick off this first panel when unintended consequences, bans, and beyond. And then Dawn is going to facilitate the question and answer afterwards. So thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Elliot Boyce. I am a retired New York State Trooper after 35 years. Most of my time with the state police I spent in narcotics, working undercover from the federal to local levels, cross-designated U.S. Customs, cross-designated DEA. One of the main reasons why I want to be involved in this particular panel, in this discussion, is I think Black America, though we see police, we don't quite understand how policing works. And when you make a ban on any product, instantly you make it a ban, it becomes contraband, and when it becomes contraband, it becomes a police issue. There's no way to dance around that. So I'm from New York. Syracuse is where I'm at now, and I'll allow the rest of the panel to speak. On this panel, as you look at it right now, there's over 100 years of experience in law enforcement from different ranges, from city, county, state, and even administrative levels. So we'll start with my first partner right here to my left, Corey Pegues.
Hello? Hello, hello.
You don't need that mic.
Do we need a mic?
No.
I need a Meeks voice. Hello, hello, yes. Good morning. I'm glad to see a nice crowded room this morning. Y'all really pumped this panel today. But listen, I learned a long time ago, when I was a police commander, I remember I first became a captain and I had to go see the chief of department, four-star chief, NYPD, kind of a big deal, right? And you know what he told me? He said, listen, you could attest, Congressman, he says, you get called to a meeting, people at that meeting, on your legislators notice, officers 100. He said, because those two people might be the two people that's gonna get your message out the most or save your life. So I never forgot that, and I lived my career like that. Again, so I'm Corey Pegues. I'm retired NYPD executive, did over 20 years. I'm the baby of the bunch, even though I got the best looking hair. I'm the baby of the bunch here. And over 20 years experience in NYPD, a range of different assignments that I had. Well, I'm happy to be here. This is a very, very important topic in the Black and brown community. We need to get it out. We have to be steadfast with this message, because you close your eyes, open it up, and it'll be around the country. Just a shameless plug. I'm a best-selling author. I have a book called Once a Cop, The Street, the Law, Two Worlds, One Man. And I also have a movie on Hulu that you can see now called A Cops and Robbers Story. Again, my name is Corey Pegues. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jiles. I've spent over 35 years in local and state law enforcement. I've also served as a state president and a national president of NOBLE, which is an acronym for the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, which is an organization of federal, state, county, and municipal law enforcement executives and chiefs of police. In addition to that, I'm Plainfield, a little bit of it all. In my local capacity or municipal capacity, most of that time was served in suburban Jersey, and at that time we had a lot of issues with guns, gangs, and drugs, and we coordinated with federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to curtail that activity in our state. Currently, right now, and I serve as a commissioner with the New Jersey Police Training Commission, and I'm happy to be here, and I'd love for this to be when people learn the most when we go back and forth and engage each other. So please feel free. There's a wealth of knowledge up here on this panel. And real skinny. We are law enforcement experts, but at the same time, most of us are born and raised and work in the communities that look like us. Thank you.
Good morning to all assembled. My name is Dave Daniels III. I hail from the city of Bridgeport, Connecticut. I was a law enforcement officer for 25 years. I retired 10 years ago as a lieutenant. I worked in internal affairs, I worked in community services, I worked in our computer-aided dispatch center. While on my tenure as a police officer, I created a few programs, food giveaways, basketball camps for kids. I did a multiplicity of things before I retired. Again, I've been retired 10 years. I've been traveling around the country with these gentlemen for the past 3 or 4 years. And it's kind of funny how I came involved in this, because in Connecticut, you know, we're kind of last to know about everything. But I got called to a meeting in New York about a menthol ban in New York, and I was like, you know, should I even go? They would never try to even do anything like this in Connecticut. I went, I listened. I still didn't quite get it, and I got back home to Connecticut, and about 3 weeks after that, they started talking about a menthol ban in Connecticut. And I came on board and been involved with these gentlemen ever since. This is the issue of our day. It's kind of weird because something this important should be more of a pronounced thing, and it's not. I find that everywhere we go, we're telling people or making people aware of it for the first time, even though we've been doing it for a few years. Like Corey, I'm also a newly published author. The name of my book is Black and Blue in Bridgeport, and it can be had on all platforms. It's an autobiography about me, and it centers on an incident of police brutality I witnessed as a rookie and how that influenced my career. My pleasure to be here, and I look for a meaningful exchange.
Thank you, gentlemen. Just so everyone is clear, we don't smoke. I've never smoked. As Corey will say, occasionally they'll smoke cigars. We're not here to promote smoking. We're basically here to promote the fact that it's going to be dangerous if this ban goes through. So if the ban goes through, thank you, sir, and I'd be remiss not to acknowledge Congressman Meek, who's also supported this program or this fight. We don't smoke cigarettes. It's about policing. When you look at the individuals that's on the panel, at some point or another, we've all served on community programs related to black policing. I served as a member of the National Black State Troopers Coalition, lifetime member of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, Guardian Association of New York State Troopers, Noble President in New York, Noble National President, and Dave Daniels is the President of the National Association of Black Law Enforcement, NABLEO, Black Law Enforcement Officers, right? So we've been fighting the fight about things that have to deal with black communities for a long time. So when someone comes in and says, oh, you know, they put these black officers together just to come out to talk about cigarettes to kind of curb the fight, that's not true. Anything that has to do with, you know, walking while black, racial profiling, at one point or another in our careers, we've dealt with it. So this is just another topic that we're basically here to deal with, all right? I'm gonna go through a few slides. The very next video is gonna be a video, the next slide. It's very important that you listen up. I think the audio is coming out of that machine right there, so hopefully everyone can hear it. It really just talks about the prohibitions, the history of prohibition. So let's see if we get this.
Pro-slavery laws to prohibition to racial profiling. To stop and frisk, history is clear. Racist laws and discriminatory bans have been devastating for Black and Hispanic America. The most recent manifestations of racial profiling are attempts to pass laws that will ban the sale of menthol cigarettes, preferred by over 85% of Blacks and Hispanics who choose to smoke. There is a long and troubled history of more unnecessary police stops and interactions with the police in communities of color, far too often with fatal outcomes.
We know in black and brown communities, the police hunt. And in non-minority communities, they protect and serve. I'm telling you, I'm an expert on that. I worked in white communities where they could do whatever they want. And in black communities, there was no tolerance. They had to go to jail.
This issue I see right now, we're talking about making menthol cigarettes illegal. But now, I know in New Jersey and in New York and some other states, they're making marijuana legal. Recreational marijuana is legal. To my knowledge, cigarettes don't make you high. Cigarettes don't impair your judgment when driving, but we're flipping one for the other. Let's legalize marijuana, Why? Because there's more money in it for the government, right? Let's make menthol cigarettes illegal and arrest more black and brown people.
When you prohibit or greatly restrict popular adult products, commodities, in underserved, marginalized communities, you quickly develop a competitive illicit market. Managed by local gangs, sometimes the cartels, usually violent, and employing large numbers of our youth to peddle these products. And let me say, most of my career was either in criminal investigation or narcotics investigation when I worked in Maryland with the Maryland State Police in Baltimore.
So this problem is not theoretical, it's happening every day. In areas such as Chicago that have seen violence occur as a result of this have begun to put together task force within their departments just to deal with the crime of illegal cigarette sales.
The proposed ban on menthol cigarettes will do nothing to stop this troubling daily reality in communities of color. The unintended consequences of a ban on menthol cigarettes need to be better understood by public policymakers who are contemplating passing legislation that will ultimately add to the often fatal interactions between Black and Hispanic Americans and police.
We talk about unintended consequences. We really have to be cognizant of this, and two, it may be intended consequences. What we know is that when certain things are criminalized, and these are medical problems, all right? I'm not talking about somebody robbing somebody committing a sexual assault on someone like that. I'm talking about when you're addicted to a substance, that's a medical problem.
I assure you, if this ban goes through, one, on the federal level, or particularly on the state level, when you do it on the state level, what's going to happen is it can't be enforced because there's no entity for law enforcement officers to, in fact, enforce the law on a menthol ban. So that means we have to create ways in order to enforce this. So what it's going to look like, it won't look like you was arrested for having Newport. You wasn't arrested for Marlboro. It'll be other offenses, the ones we know: disorderly conduct, obstructing administration, misdemeanor crimes, and then you always get the bonus: resisting arrest.
When I was approached by this, I was the president of Noble, and they approached me and they said, they're talking about a ban on menthol cigarettes. And I actually thought they were joking, because I'm saying, why would you ban menthol cigarettes? And again, don't smoke, don't want to smoke. We'll never promote anybody to smoke. But, it reminded me of the crack versus cocaine moment. Now, crack, you get all kind of time. Cocaine, you get a pass. And what's the difference? One community smokes crack, one community uses cocaine. More people went to jail during the war on drugs than in all of slavery. Bad policy affects us, and it hits us in a way that it don't hit any other community. And my frustration is we got to stop it.
Let's look at it at another way too also. It's going to be used as an instrument to harass those who may not be doing anything with just smoking that one cigarette. So now all of a sudden that one person, or a group of kids hanging out, and somebody's smoking a cigarette, first thing the police is going to do is going to want to know where you got it from. Right. Who's selling it, how much they got, and how can we connect to them. So now the kids are now being harassed in forms we really don't want to go down to. But that was the initial idea of what the stop and frisk was.
Despite institutional racism and discrimination, the law enforcement partners have risen in the ranks from keeping the peace in neighborhoods across the country to the highest levels of executive positions in law enforcement on municipal, state, and federal levels.
As a police officer for 20 years, I've seen laws made with good intentions that have bad consequences, especially for communities of color. It's a bad law with bad consequences.
If we're the people who are being more arrested and more incarcerated, more detained by police, why would we create another situation where police would have that increased contact? And then you see the size, so we're going to hammer the point home. Because when you start having police officers determine whether a cigarette's mentholated or non-mentholated, whether it's legal or illegal, we already know what that turns into, right? That turns into a detention, an arrest, a summons somewhere down the line, and somebody doesn't pay a fine, and then it becomes a warrant, and then it becomes more people. So while we are taking many things off the table to decrease the opportunity to jail our communities, they're putting something back on in the back way to make sure that our communities become victims all over again.
For almost a decade, since 2013 up to today, law enforcement partners have been on the road from Maine to Florida, from Washington, D.C. to Washington State, from New York City to rural Georgia, throughout Middle America, the West, and the Southwest, to more than 25 states and municipalities, to raise their voices of concern about the dangers of banning menthol cigarettes and its impacts on people of color, where more than 85% of blacks and Hispanics who choose to smoke prefer menthol cigarettes.
We have a lot of other alternative ways to go about dealing with menthol use, cigarette use in general, vaping. And we have to employ that educational component. We have to do it. You can't legislate your way out of stuff. So no, banning is not the way to go about doing it. Try some of the other measures that you seem to refuse to try.
You know, you smoke cigarettes for 100 years, you say, okay, we're going to ban menthol. Black people are not going to just stop smoking.
We partnered with these folks because we got tired of seeing bad legislation being passed that impacted people in our communities. We partnered with these people because we got tired of seeing issues where the idiots on our job were taking advantage of that bad legislation to jack with people in our community. That's why this issue is so important, ladies and gentlemen. It's about making sure there is no bad legislation that has a direct and dynamic and dramatic impact on the people where we live, work, and play.
Because we not only here in Noble, we go to Congress, we go to state legislatures, we go to anywhere we can get this message out. I believe preventive. If we can do something to prevent this menthol ban, then that's what we should be working on. That's why I'm involved. My background is civil rights. But some of you, every time I stand before Noble, I say I work with black law enforcement because it's better to be working with the police than chased by the police.
From one nationally recognized black law enforcement organization in 2013, working to stop menthol bans, to now 10 organizations, these black and Hispanic men and women in blue are dedicated to protecting all Americans, especially marginalized and over-policed communities of color. The law enforcement partners have garnered the respect of community leaders and legislators on both sides of the aisle. They have raised their voices of concern about the dangers of banning menthol cigarettes that will do more harm to black and Hispanic Americans than achieve the goal of public health protection. The law enforcement partners have responded to the calls to go on the road often in less than 48 hours to speak out on the issue to legislative bodies contemplating menthol bans. The law enforcement partners write letters, submit written testimony, call policymakers, and testify at city council hearings, hearings of boards of county legislators, state legislators, mayors, governors, and even meetings at the White House. The law enforcement partners are actively sought by local, national, and international print, syndicated radio, and television media outlets for commentary on community policing, police reform, and menthol bans. The law enforcement partners regularly reach out to members of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressional Hispanic Caucus, National Black Caucus of State Legislators, National Association of Latino Elected Officials, Board of Latino Legislative Leaders, African American Mayors Association, Black and Hispanic State Caucuses, and Black and Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, where they have cultivated their long-standing relationships to secure allies in the fight to stop the menthol bans. Law enforcement partners will stay on the highways and byways across America to issue a clarion call to local, state, and federal legislators to stop the ban on menthol cigarettes.
Just a little backdrop so you. There you go. Nope, that's fine. Just a little backdrop, just so everyone understands. The proposed ban is on the manufacturing of menthol cigarettes, smoke products. It's on the manufacturing. Basically, we're just going to wipe it out completely. But there's no guidelines for police to deal with it if that happens. But the thing, the vision I need you to have in your head is, this side of the room will be able to smoke the cigarettes of their choice. This side of the room will not be able to. This side of the room, since menthol cigarettes and these products are predominantly smoked, 85% of African Americans will now be subjected to enforcement by police, while others can smoke their own. So if the ban was on all cigarettes, this probably wouldn't even be a conversation. But since it's banned on one side of the street, it becomes, as I say it, a lab experiment for black folks to see how we fare with this ban compared to what will happen in the future if they transition to somewhere else. Now, we understand it's very important that they want to make sure that health is taking care of the African American community. We understand these people or the policymakers that put this in place have good intentions, but they have not taken the time to see how it will pan out if the ban goes into effect. And that's basically not inquiring to get information from policing, down the line change where it will ultimately impact black farmers and marketing. So this is a lot bigger than just saying we're going to ban menthol. So banning menthol cigarettes, just want you to know, to be aware, 98% of youth at this time are not smoking. Youth of African Americans who, and Latinos, they've done a study, is less than 2%. Actually is at the point where African American kids, the smoking level is so low to the point that you can't even measure it. So when people come and say, oh, it's to save African American kids are not smoking cigarettes. It's not even a topic. And what's happening is because of education, treatment, and counseling is reduced, and that's not even a word they can use anymore. Youth are more likely to smoke marijuana. Our kids, and unfortunately in this day and age, because multiple states, over 25 states, are now legalized or have legalized marijuana, have chosen to smoke marijuana, not cigarettes. So the argument of we're trying to save black kids is really not viable anymore. That's been proven by the National Institute of Drug Abuse. They did a study, and it came out that smoking cigarettes for black American kids is down. The illicit market, which is the thing we're going to get into, we're going to talk about significantly amongst this panel, is the part that makes it dangerous for our community. Anything in which we increase enforcement on increases the opportunity of one of our kids getting harmed. Good individuals who normally would not traffic it will see this as an opportunity, because the way they're trying to massage this thing in is no individual will be impacted by this ban. Well, that's not true, because if you understand policing, in order for us to get to the next level for as individuals, we have to do an investigation individual. So that means we catch one individual with illegal transition and use them to get to the next person, we transition to them to get to the next person. So as we go through this panel, there's no way that an individual is not going to be impacted. Ultimately, they will, because that's the only way we could do a police investigation. Also, there's going to be a significant reduce in tax base. So many of the states like Massachusetts that put forward a ban are reconsidering it, because when you ban it in one state, all you have to do is transfer over to the next state. What's happening is, and I will ask you in your particular states to pay attention to this, is like in the state of Massachusetts, they have this caveat, which most people don't know. If you get caught bringing a certain amount of cigarettes from one state to the next, they can seize your vehicle. And most people don't know that. That's like having a federal powers. So we have to pay attention to that also. I'm going to play another video. This video is very important because it highlights how lucrative, give me that mic there, how lucrative it is to sell or transport cigarettes. This is like my favorite one.
Tobacco trafficking is already an issue, with sophisticated trafficking routes mapped up and down the East Coast. Tobacco traffickers purchase cigarettes from low-tax states and sell it in higher tax states. For example, purchasing legally taxed products in Virginia for approximately $4.70 a pack and reselling them in New York City for approximately $13.50 a pack creates an estimated $8.80 per pack profit margin. To put this in context, a single carton 10 packs, yields a profit of $88. A single case, 60 cartons, yields $5,280. And a single truckload, typically 800 cases, yields $4.2 million.
How many people traffic in cigarettes? Because I can tell you we are. Because of the way they're writing this, and we've been to a couple of different cities, and a lot of as they try to tap dance around the potential legal aspects of it, is they're saying we're going to slide it under the health department. And when you put it up under the health department, first of all, health department, law enforcement officers, they have less resources than police agencies in themselves. And since you try to put it under the health department because you say no individual is going to be impacted, basically what you're doing is you're forcing law enforcement agencies to create task force. So the health department doesn't have enough resources. So the health department says we need help. And because they need help, they call New York City PD and they say, hey, Chief Corey or Captain Corey, I need some resource. And they put together a task force. So since cigarette enforcement is under alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, chances are it's going to be ATF task force. Then they bring all these other little agencies together, and now when you get charged with cigarettes, you're going to get charged on the federal level. Since the FDA has done nothing far as asking police officers, putting together panels, doing an impact study, ultimately, they don't have any idea what's going to happen because they haven't brought the law enforcement professionals in to ask. So what happens is when they say no individual is going to be impacted, if you understand policing, there's no way to push this through without police being involved. This is an example right now. Most of the illegal cigarettes that are being transported into this country are coming from overseas, China being one of the predominant places. China is another popular name, a popular place when you want to hear about a problem that's probably in all your communities right now, which is fentanyl. So just imagine, if they're the leading distributors of illegal cigarettes like menthol, and they're also leading distributors coming from out of China of fentanyl, that's a heck of a combination. And at some point in time, you have to imagine they will get together. This is an example of policing in America in which a 14-year-old male for vaping was pinned down and basically assaulted by a police officer. We're not for bad police. I make it really clear. All the bad police could get out the profession. We're here to support the good police officers. Unfortunately, even good police officers crack under the pressure because they're dealing with so many things. My last assignment with the New York State Police was I was the director of the State Police Employee Assistance Program. And when you get into a program like that, there's two places you get in and you go in and it's like a whole different world. That's internal affairs and when you get into somebody's personal life. Police officers are cracking in America. And that's not to justify any bad actions, but we have to understand now we got to put something out there like a health issue because we've already failed when it comes to dealing with mental health related issues. Now we got to put something out there like cigarettes and have them deal with it. That's not good. And we don't, and they don't need that. Adverse impact of vaping, there's a couple of different scenarios. For some reason in Maryland, in Ocean City, Maryland, they've had a couple of incidents where vaping, which is just a violation, and black youth have been taken into custody in an aggressive, physical, assaulting way over vapes. One of the things we talk about all the time is when there's a violation, no one should lose their life. And unfortunately, when you put something like a ban on cigarettes, which is unclassified at this time, and police officers are already involved, bad police officers are involved in killing black kids or black people over violations, we don't need anything out there for them to, make a mistake or intentionally hurt or harm. Fake news, the thing you have to understand, we gave you some literature, please review it. The Master Settlement Agreement of 1998 basically says you can't advertise. You'll never see Michael Jordan, LeBron James, any popular rapper advertising cigarettes. It's not gonna happen, it's illegal. But people who are supporting this ban will show you pictures of the Cool Jazz Festival saying back in the 80s that Big Tobacco targeted African Americans. Yes, they did, but they targeted everybody. You know, you had John Wayne, Elvis Presley, and all of them highlighting cigarettes also. It was about money. But now with the Master Settlement Agreement, it's no longer there, only point of sale. So that's not true. Please pay attention when they say that. The first thing you can say is the master settlement agreement. It doesn't happen. So that's the end of the slides. What we're going to do is we'll get into discussion. It is very important to understand, please ask us the question. The thing that we talk about a lot is this. The most dangerous cop isn't the white cop. The most dangerous cop is the silent black cop. The cop that co-signs on things that they know are going to impact their community, their families, and their neighborhoods. These police officers are right here just among a few that are not silent. They stand up and they'll tell you the truth. So beyond this, if you have a question, ask. So I'll go with Corey first. Can you give us your perspective on the ban and how it will impact their communities?
So, can we do a sidebar? In the essence of time, ladies and gentlemen, have questions? Because he gave you a lot of information. So I would rather, we only have like 15 minutes, I would rather, if the panel agrees, if y'all don't agree, if y'all want to say something, you can say something. I'd rather take questions because I want to make sure that when y'all leave out of here, you are fully versed in what you're going to go back to your constituents with. So I'll defer my time for questions.
Dawn has questions, right?
Just share one other. I just want to share one other perspective while she's getting the specific questions. I'm also a professor at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I lecture at a number of other colleges. And one thing I always teach the students about when we're dealing with policy and public safety, when it comes down to certain communities, if there's what it is, the menthol thing is, I don't know where that came out of, because that's not the addictive substance in tobacco. Nicotine is an addictive substance. So when you have, and that's why ban menthol, just which one demographic uses versus all cigarettes, all right? Now, the thing of it is that when it comes to our community, even going back with the fake war on drugs, I call it, all right? When it started crossing over to other communities, they said, let's use a medical model to deal with it. There's two models that you use when you're developing public safety policy, especially in law enforcement. You use a medical model or a criminal model. And when you use a criminal model, you basically go out and you just arrest people, you pack up the jails. You cannot arrest your way out of this problem. I'm here to tell you, all right? So that leaves us with a medical model, all right, which is often used in other communities when there's a substance abuse problem. But when it comes to our communities, they want to always default to the criminal model. So just think about that as we get these questions coming in too, and I can elaborate on that more as well. But we know what works. It's education, treatment, and counseling. That works. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Assemblymember Lori Wilson, and I have the pleasure of hailing from the state of California, where we banned menthol. And I happen to also chair the Black Caucus, and we were lobbied heavily by the Black community, not anybody else. The people who came to us was the Black community. The people who were, lobbying all of our legislators, going through the halls, were members of the Black community to support the ban on menthol. We ended up having to have a ours, we have this whole referendum system, so it not only got in the legislature, then it got recalled, and then it got voted on again, and then the voters passed it. But it was the Black community that was driving it, and I came in late, so my apologies. So I'm not sure if you addressed why it is that the Black community is the primary driver of these bans, and that's what we've seen not just in California, but when we, as a Black Caucus, researched it, it was people from other states coming to us who were Black saying this needs to be banned to protect our community. Thank you.
Yeah,
Right.
So after y'all heard,
Where's your mic?
You heard of this guy called Michael Bloomberg? He used to be mayor in New York City. He's one of the richest people in the world. He's behind this, tobacco free for kids and everything. So some people could be brought. We know that from the civil rights era, some people could be brought. So they bring in a bunch of Black people, and I'm not necessarily upset with them. But this is going to be an old person ban. Think about this. 24 states are online legally now to sell marijuana, right? So you telling me that Nana that's been smoking menthol cigarettes for 60 years can't get her cigarette, but my 22-year-old son could go buy all the marijuana he wants? It doesn't even make sense. At a show of hands, how many people you know 25 years and less that smoke cigarettes? They all smoking weed and they vaping.
Cannabis.
So
Cannabis. That's the proper term. No, stop.
we're around kinfolk. We don't call that cannabis. We call it weed. So what I'm saying is just think about this honestly, because you got to really think about it. In 25 years, the tobacco industry, it might be distinct because young people not smoking cigarettes. Like, we're trying to kill the tobacco industry now. I mean, multi-billion-dollar, they're gonna pivot and get some more money some other kind of way. The cigarette thing, they're not even worrying about that. They're going to plastics or whatever. They got too much money. But people not gonna be smoking in 25 years. Because young people, remember, we smoked on airplanes, we smoked in clubs and stuff now, and then people will go outside and smoke their cigarette. People don't even wanna go outside and smoke a cigarette now because just for people to look and say, ew, you smoking a cigarette? So it doesn't make sense to me as a black man, as a police executive who knows what policing do. When you give them a tool and you put it in their tool, we know 3 people, and I'm gonna stop right here. We know 3 people that was killed because of menthol cigarettes. Sandra Bland in Texas, any legislator from Texas here? She refused to put her menthol Newport cigarette out, allegedly hung up, right? Eric Garner in Staten Island was allegedly selling Newport cigarettes. He was choked to death. And George Floyd, he was allegedly buying Newport cigarettes with a counterfeit $50 bill. So what does that tell me? If we didn't have this, we wouldn't even know about them 3.
Let Jiles get some of that, and then we'll move on to the next question.
All right, now, another way to address the question is that unfortunately, a lot of times, people don't get the facts straight, and they get misinformation. For an example, menthol cigarettes are not more dangerous than non-menthol cigarettes. This is according to the FDA. All right, but you have people going forward with the assumption that menthol cigarettes are worse than Marlboros, but that's not the case. All right, and menthol does not cause smokers to inhale more smoke. These are facts that I'm telling you about. This is reported out from the FDA and the National Institute of Health. All right, African-American smokers smoking, period, across the board, is at an all-time low, 12.4%. Less than for whites, which is 13.4%. And that's a byproduct of, in the last over 20, 25 years, smoking has gone down nationwide over 66%. And the biggest dip has been in the African-American community, and then there's even a larger dip with the youth. It's so low now that it's hardly even able to be measured. It's 0.06% with black youth. But these numbers, and I can give you all of the data for it.
They have the sheet.
Okay.
They have the sheet. We gave it to them. So.
And also, too, menthol cigarettes are not more addictive or harder to quit either. That's another fallacy that's out there. So once people are given this misinformation, what happens is, they used to say a lie will go around the corner before the truth can get across the street. All right, so if you give people, if they don't get full and fair information, a lot of I just testified before the New Jersey Assembly this past Monday on the same issue. They're trying to ban it in New Jersey. And at least 3 or 4 legislators came up to me after the hearing saying that they would like to meet with me in their office to get more information on it because they're not getting this side of the story.
Exactly.
Right.
So we have one more
Not
question.
getting
We have
all the
another
facts.
question. 2 more? Yes.
Hold up, Al.
Wait. Yes, ma'am.
Well, mine is simple. I just wanted to know, when is the effective date of this particular ban that you all are talking about that we need to be pushing back on? I think I missed it at the beginning.
Well, actually, we're waiting for the FDA to come down with a decision on a date. That we don't have an actual date yet. It's supposed to be between 60 and 90 days. But can I?
So what she really want to know, when will it hit the streets? So even if they come down and say they're going to do a ban, it's still going to take a couple of years before it gets through everything.
Right.
So before it hits the street and it's nationally a ban, we still have time.
Yeah.
But we definitely need to get everyone's opinion. And just so we can move on to the next question, for California, understand this, we're always behind the 8 ball. So as Corey said, because of the money, they get to the community first and give them the health side but no one ever hears this side. Have you heard this side before? No. All right, and that's what happens. They get to you first, they get to community, they talk about health. And the number they always gives is 48,000 African Americans have died as related to smoking-related illnesses, right? But what they don't give you is the asterisk. That's 448,000 African Americans over the age of 65 are dying. Well, meanwhile, by the CDC in the same report, from 1 to 25, the number one cause of death for African American males is what? Homicide. Homicide. So you ban menthol cigarettes, you give one more thing to go out to the street for our young brothers that believe that this is the way to live, a quick buck, it's going to impact them. No one ever hears that side. No one talks about it because they get through the door before us and we're always running behind. There was another question?
Yes.
Thank you. Somebody else?
We do have one for you here from
Okay.
this list. How can policies be crafted to discourage criminal activity without compromising public safety?
Well, every single bill that you all know, every single bill has unintended consequences. So if you're drafting a bill, and especially if it has a law enforcement component, you should have law enforcement, your local police chief, just getting the input from the chief of police, the police commander.
Black organizations.
Especially black police too, because if your criminal justice bill is going to be crafted that's going to affect the black and brown community, you should get the input. But Jiles, he does this a lot.
Yeah. National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, which Brother Shipp was a former national president, they are the leaders when it comes to policing black in the black communities.
And let me tell you, not only for this particular policy or a piece of legislation that's being proposed, what we did in New Jersey, thank God to the late, great Senator Ron Rice, proposed legislation to make sure that any time some type of legislation that was going to come out, specifically with public safety, before it goes through to a full vote by the full body, wanted to have adverse impact to those in the black community. All right, so I would, not only on this piece of policy, but any policy that's going to impact public safety, I would first consider it to have it go to a committee or however in that form of government, however that's established, go to that particular section to see what's the adverse impact. Just like, and if we had did that with crack and cocaine, we wouldn't have the numbers of people incarcerated we have today. Right. You know, so like I said, not only on this piece of policy or legislation, but on all legislation, should see what's the adverse impact on the African American community.
And remember, when you talk about policing,
and I can give you a copy of that from our state. That
we just went through reform, so people are not, particularly people that look, there's a lot of black police officers out there that are not black. Let me say that again. A lot of black police officers out there are not black. They forgot where they come from because financially they're connected to it. So be aware. But what you can do is you have a whole house of police agencies, nonprofit agencies like Noble, NABLEO, which are all police agencies from around the country. And there's another organization out there, the National Black State Troopers Coalition. And nothing moves in New York City without the Grand Council of Guardians. So those organizations, so you go to your police chief, you get their opinion, and there's nothing wrong with checks and balances. And then you push something out to Noble and have them give some information. I believe she had another question. She has a question over there.
Yes. Here's the last question, and we'll be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I've heard it before, still listening, trying to learn a little bit more. Question for you and the young lady, from the representative from California. When did you pass your ban, and is there a sunset on the ban?
Just recently, because it went through this whole reform process through the voters, but there is no sunset, it is forever.
Okay. As that has been passed, are you all looking to pay attention to what happens in California?
Yes, actually,
and then report out on that.
Area that's really close to us is, to me, is Massachusetts. Now, Massachusetts banned it also. And what ultimately happened, You know, no matter what all those arguments were, people went to anywhere in Massachusetts, you can go 15 minutes and be in another state and buy your cigarettes there, and you bring them back. So what happened, it made a big deficit in the budget, and now Massachusetts is rethinking the whole issue because it did not reduce smoking. People either went to another brand or they went across the state line and got the cigarette of their choice.
Or they went to Native American reservations. So even if we pass a federal law, I'm in New York, and in Buffalo, New York, we just met with them. There are 3 Native American reservations up there. I will tell you, in New York State, we trying to govern the Native American property with taxes for individuals that were not from the Native American, and they tore us out the frame.
And another important piece too is what we all have dealt with our whole careers on a regular basis. First of all, if a person wants a substance, they're going to find a way to get it, all right? And it's usually going to manifest itself in illicit ways. So now you're going to create an underground economy, and people are going to be selling these banned cigarettes in the black market. Already in New York, for example, 50% of the black market is controlled by organized crime, and they're already selling non-tax cigarettes. So now you're going to add this to the toxic mix, and what's going to happen is people are going to be selling them out of the back of vans. The profit margin, which you've seen earlier, is so high on it. They're going to be selling them out of the back of vans. They're not going to be on Park Avenue. They're going to be in the neighborhoods selling them. What are you going to do? Right away, they're going to call the police. And now you're going to have more unnecessary interaction with people of color and law enforcement.
And we're in America. We got 2 wars right now, right? We're fighting 2 wars. We got a serious migrant issue in America, and we talking about banning cigarettes. Right. Like, where's our priorities in America, especially in the black and brown community? We could give $120 billion to Ukraine and Israel, but we got all of this poverty in the low socioeconomic neighborhoods in our community. And now you want to ban something that's going to, the underground is going to explode. You're never going to jail for a cigarette because it's never going to be a crime. But like Elliot said, you're going to get locked up for the and ones: unlawful assembly, refuse a lawful order to disperse, a resisting arrest. And look, they decriminalizing marijuana, right? Prisons are business. Prisons are beds. Who they gonna fill them beds up with? Most of the prisons are private when you leave the big cities. You get these little towns, it's private, but they gotta fill those beds up. What better way? Let's ban this substance, and now we gotta fill those beds up. So all I'm really asking y'all to do is just take a hard look at it. I get the health issue. I totally get
100%.
it. We all get the health issue, but it's a health issue for us, and it's a health issue for them also.
Correct. And I believe you're from Chicago, correct? And in Chicago, I think we mentioned it, Chicago, they had to create task force already. It hit so hard in Chicago, they had to create task force. So I guarantee you, you're finding that African Americans that are involved in the trade in Chicago are going to jail for extended periods of time over cigarettes. And what's going to happen, individuals that will get caught up, particularly in federal, because you know, when you have a federal crime, if you're not aware of it, if you make a phone call, so if I call Dave and say, hey, Dave, get me 2 packs of cigarettes, if it's on a federal wiretap, you going to jail for that time. You gonna take a hit.
And let me just share this too, being that Chicago came up, how well did the Volstead Act with their prohibition of alcohol, all right? You see what happened, it went underground. You had Al Capone and every other person in organized crime in other places too, not just Chicago, but Al was a big popular figure. And so what you do is you drive these things underground. We know what works. There's science to prove it. What works is education, treatment, and counseling, all right, which is most of the time the medical side doesn't hit our community. It usually hit other communities, suburban communities, when it comes down to treating people for addiction problems, all right? But our communities, they want to lock everybody up and fill up the jails. That's how we came out with the adverse impact legislation in New Jersey, because once we started digging deeper, peeling back the onion, we found out there's a disproportionate number of African Americans incarcerated for the same type of crimes in the state of New Jersey. That's what we looked at, and that's when Senator Rice said, no, we got to do something about this. And we created a commission to look at specifically the disproportionate numbers of African Americans and Latinos incarcerated in the state of New Jersey. And that's one of the results of that commission, what we came back with and made recommendations to the legislature.
Hey, Dave, 30 seconds. Can you close it? Work on 30 seconds. What do you think? Because we're running out of time, so we want to close out, be respectful.
Well, I think that, we've given you a lot of information. A lot has been said. As you can see, me and my colleagues are very passionate about this. We're passionate about this because we've been advocating on behalf of black people our whole careers. And this means something to us. All of us are retired, and we're still fighting problems in the black community. They come in, they wrap this up as a health issue, and it's actually going to make health worse, because right now you got a United States legal company, government sanctioned, putting out cigarettes. When the black market gets it, you're not going to have the same quality control. You're not going to have the same standards out there. So you have cigarettes being made in the back of somebody's house. That's got to be worse. I mean, if cancer numbers are what they are now, imagine what they'll be when everybody starts making their own cigarettes. Yeah. This is important. It speaks to our health, it speaks to our welfare, and it speaks to our ability to stay out of jail. So this is something that's really, really, really important. So you got to get involved in this end.
And police don't have the resources to continue it.
Exactly, exactly. They don't. They really don't. The police. You think not a lot about this. The police don't know anything either.
No.
When we talk to cops on a local level, most of them have never heard of this, and there's no plan in place to even, there's no model, no plan in place to even attack this issue, so it's going to be bad.
As we close, we'll say this. If you're looking up here and you're saying, where did these individuals come from? We never met them before. We're not sure, should we trust them or not? All you have to do is go to a local police officer, a black officer. If you don't, you should find a relationship with a good black officer in your town and just ask them the honest question. Just ask any drug task force police officer what will happen when they ban menthol cigarettes, and they'll give you the answer. I'm a Real Men, Real Pink ambassador for breast cancer. And one of the things I learned is even the American Cancer Society, they put out a report, and they're basically saying, we will reduce cancer illnesses in African-American community if Medicaid allowed for early screening. So that's the part right there. They already know what the answer is, so why are they going to ban it? So remember, this side of the community can smoke. That side of the community, which is our side, is going to be policed. And the only thing we need to know is if we had early screening, if there wasn't food deserts, because all the things they throw in is diabetes, heart conditions. Hell, if you live in the hood, you could be a little stressed, and your heart could be pumping a little faster too. So please don't be fooled. Education, treatment, and counseling is the way. Please reach out and make sure they do an impact study. Stop this, because the impact study will tell you exactly what we just told you today.
And
Thank
let
you
me
for
tell
having
you
us.
how important this is to me. I'm an on-air personality for Court TV and the Law and Crime Network. By the way, I'll be on tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. And every time they ask me a question live on television about a shooting or a kidnapping, Congressman, I'm trying to pivot it to the menthol, because you got a million viewers looking at it. So that's how important it is to me to get this message out. I'm constantly trying to pivot the question on a kidnapping or whatever and relate it to this menthol so the conversation can keep going. Everyone needs to know about this menthol thing, especially if you have babies, grandkids, or whatever. Thank y'all for having us. Really appreciate this. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good rest of the conference. Thank you.